When CEO Satya Nadella, the guy who's been betting millions and billions on AI, admits that it's not ready for prime time, we should probably all pay attention. So think about it. So the corporate world isn't adopting it the way that we were all promised. And after 25 years in tech, I've seen this movie before. The hype cycle is peaking, but the reality check is coming. Let's dive in today. Welcome to Startup Hack. I'm Spencer Thomason here at Startup Hack. We love to train software developers in our licensed coding boot camps, as well as build custom software solutions for a company. With a decade of executive leadership as a fractional CTO and 25 years in software development, I've mastered transforming tech teams and products. So we're going to dive into the hype train and how the hype train is maybe running out a little bit of steam here. And let's dive into some key points. So let's go over and look at some of these articles here, because Microsoft Satya Nadella pumps the brakes on AI. He says fears of an artificial superintelligence that could replace humans are just a distraction at a time when ChatGPT still has major shortcomings. So the world has yet to turn to any of AI's hype and spending into a meaningful lift in the actual economy, says Satya Nadella. And I totally agree with this. I'm really glad to hear him talking about this, because all of the CEOs around AI have been pumping up and inflating its value. You know, things like Mark Zuckerberg saying that it's going to replace mid-level developers by the end of the year. Like, we've heard this for a long time. I'm a huge Tesla fanboy. I really like Elon Musk. And you can love me or hate me for that opinion, but I think he's one of the most impactful people that we've had in the 21st century. Now, that all being said, he's been promising that AI would drive me around in my car for a long time. And I bought FSD in early 2020, ready for my car to drive me around. It's 2025, and I still don't even have V13. And I'm really angry about the latest FSD anyways, because it won't let me set my drive and already thinks it knows better than me. So back to this. Satya Nadella is also pumping the brakes here a little bit. He said his comments were made during a podcast interview, and he said this: success will be measured through tangible global economic growth rather than arbitrary benchmarks of how well AI programs can complete challenges like obscure math puzzles, especially because they find that these math puzzles are being fed back into the training, so they're cheating the test anyways. Those are interesting in isolation, but do not have a practical utility. It's kind of like the new chip that has been the computing chip that Microsoft just announced, right? This is something that we're seeing that's interesting in isolation, but until I see real world facts, I'm not going to worry about quantum computing and quit my day job, right? So the comments seemed intended to implore insiders to stop spreading hype about a so-called artificial general intelligence that could replace humans in most tasks. Nadella said essentially that it will not happen, and either way is an unnecessary distraction. Totally agree here. ChatGPT right now is still, at best, a cool party trick. You can do some neat things with it, but its inaccuracy is still ways away. And he says, if you're going to have this explosion, abundance, whatever commodity of intelligence available, the first thing we have to observe is GDP growth. This is where we got a little bit ahead of ourselves with all the AGI hype. When we say things like industrial revolution, let's have the industrial revolutionary type growth. I totally agree. We haven't seen this yet. We see some neat party tricks, and everybody's talking about how fast it's going because it's beating this benchmark or that benchmark. But I'm actually arguing, and I'm going to go into some of this here, I'm actually arguing that we aren't seeing it. He went on to say that 10% of inflationary adjusted growth attributed to AI would prove that the technology is actually meaningful, right? And we haven't even seen this yet. So he's even showing we have not even seen a 10% growth yet, let alone any of this. So, right? So I think this is a really interesting take, and I really agree with it. Of course, I jumped onto this because I totally agree with this. Watching Microsoft Copilot's rollout has been a really good example of this. It was ultimately a pretty decent flop, right? A lot of people are using it. We're finding some use cases for it, and I'm going to get into that here. But ultimately, what we're finding here is that what Satya Nadella said here is ultimately true, right? Is that a usual growth rate points out around 2% and is not conflict knowledge with the worker. And making these comments and others, Whitmore argues that humans are in a bound relationary scenario where a cognitive amplifier could change the game. Now, people are saying that it will impress. This is what Whitmore says. Can go over some of our other comments. Let's get to where I was looking here. So back to the future. Getting back to Nadella's chair, there's a point in the interview where the exec talks about what happens in the 1990s. He says, the current time reminds me a little bit of my first few years in the tech industry starting in the 90s, where there was real debate about whether it was going to be RISC or CISC. There was beginning to be Windows NT, so everything from the core silicon, and you could say the cloud did a bunch of that. And obviously, distributed computing and cloud did change client server. The web changed things massively, but that does feel a little more stacked than even the past, right? So he's talking about trying to relate it to how much the internet changed the GDP, which it did, right? We saw massive shifts in real world, and we've seen this over the last 20 years. We've still yet to see anything other than CapEx spending. So any movement we've seen from AI is because these companies are artificially inflating it by spending so much money on it. When he tackles the industry view of capital expenses or CapEx for businesses, claiming that data centers will inherently be overbuilt. There's another point that the commentators use to characterize that he's saying is throwing water on the AI fire. Also, Nadella pointed out that it's not unlikely to be a winner-take-all market. He noted barriers for disruption that will likely put the brakes on wider implementation of AI, at least in the beginning. So I really agree with this. I think that this is something that we're definitely seeing at scale. I think until we start to really see corporate adoption of AI, so far I do a lot with AI. We use it as I use it for a lot of text-based things because it's really good at text. We do a lot of it for like email generation and doing marketing emails. For these type of party trick type things, it's great. You are not anywhere near seeing AI becoming like a life-sustaining where it's making life-sustaining decisions. You're not even seeing it at business-related decisions, right? Until we can see it get within to at least a 90% accuracy, there's no way people are going to want to adopt it. So companies are struggling to integrate AI meaningfully, and the technology requires a massive customization to even be useful, and even then, it's still largely inaccurate. Training costs are exceeding the expected benefits, right? Technical infrastructure is totally overwhelmed right now. The amount of data centers that are being grown just to be able to hit the AI hype is ridiculous. So ChatGPT right now is essentially an impressive party trick. Corporate adoption rates have still remained amazingly low. Considering how many corporations are trying to integrate AI, we're seeing integration actually be very, very low. So there's a gap between the demo and the reality, and that's what I'm really talking about. So I hit this other one because I'm already getting hate on my channel, which is really funny to me. I actually find it really amusing. So if somebody who's listening to this and thinking, man, Spencer's got it totally wrong, man, I would love to be wrong here, but it is like, I'm not wrong here. We are not seeing this adoption, and I'm not the only one saying this. So like this author here was saying why I think AI takeoff is relatively slow. He says that there's this cost disease, right? Less productive sectors tend to become a larger share of the economy over time. The human bottleneck become more important, and more productive is AI. The more productive is AI. Let's say AI increases the rate of good farm ideas by 10x. Well, until the FDA gets its act together, the relevant constraint is going to be the rate of approval, right? So even if we were to 10x, even if this could, which I think we're still a long ways from it, be able to 10x drugs, we're still drug creation, we're still going to be limited by the FDA because they're not going to use AI for it for at least 2 decades. Now, there's also going to be regulatory obstacles, right? That's another part. The O-ring models that make AI hard to work with, right? The O-ring model stipulates that in settings, it is the worst performer who sets the overall level of productivity. And this is really true because until AI can be really accurate, then we can't rely on it. One of the big things we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people work to poison AIs, right? Who are against it. As long as AI is susceptible to that, it's going to be even more harmful, right? So there's a lot of this, and I can continue to go through this. So I'll link this article in here because I find it really interesting. He said, I don't think the economics of AI are well defined by either an increase in labor supply, an increase in TFP, and an increase in capital. It's much more like Star Trek technology fell into our backyard, and how long will it take us to figure out how to integrate it with other things humans do? You can debate how long that will take, but the Solo model, the Romer model, and their offshoots will not give us reliable answers, right? There's vast literature on the diffusion of new technology. Go ask deep research. Historically, it usually takes more time than the most sophisticated observer expect. Electricity, for instance, arguably took up to 40 years to roll out. I do think AI will spread faster than that, but the reading this literature will bring you back down to earth. So then he comes into this here too. Historically, GDP growth is remarkably smooth, albeit for somewhat mysterious reason. North America is a vastly different place than it was. He talks about that. But ultimately, he's hitting on that until we see GDP growth, we're not seeing the actual adoption. And that's what I keep coming back to too. I haven't seen the growth from this yet. If so, it's just because everybody's on the spending frenzy, like Nadella was talking about, to try to be the one to get into AGI. And so there's this spending that if we can get to AGI, what I think we need to focus on is practical applications of its use. This is going to be to take small models, train them to be very good at specific things, and then let those models do that thing. The more we continue to try to build AGI in these massive models, the more we're wasting time, energy, and resources. Smaller models built to do specific tasks is where this is going to be. Now, if you have systems that aren't connected, let us help you out, because here at Startup Hack, our specialty is helping you connect your systems so that your company works like a well-oiled machine. So check out startuphack.com/Spencer, and we can help you out with that today. Now, the market response has been really interesting because investment is starting to slow down. Funding rounds are becoming more critical and valuation multiples are decreasing. And just because you slap .ai onto your application or say now with AI, people are starting to get more, and we're hitting AI exhaustion. We're hitting a fatigue where people are tired of hearing AI because they haven't seen the reality of it impact their life. AI interfaces still feel unnatural. I know we've gotten a long ways with with speech into AI, and that's great, but the trust issue limits the adoption. There's error handling that needs to get better because it's creating frustration. When I try to ask AI to do something and it spits something out and it's wrong, and then I say that's wrong and it spits me out something even more wrong, I'm obviously going to get pretty frustrated. So you can see, and I get this absolutely every day when I try to use AI, and I'm pushing to try to use it, one, so that I can talk about it here on the YouTube channel, and also two, because we are trying to build some practical systems with it. So we have things like AskMany.ai, where we're integrating all of the latest AI so you can do one request and get multiple responses against multiple different AI. So if you're interested in that, go check out AskMany.ai. But we're really trying to work to build practical AI systems, and it's much harder than it sounds because AI is still so inaccurate. It also has an extremely large hardware cost. If you don't believe me, check out my previous videos about what it costs to run AI. Now, I'm working on stuff, and I've got a bunch of builds out over here on my desk over here. That's a huge mess over here behind the camera, because I'm working on trying to build out some things to show you guys how we can build out minimal PCs to be able to build some realistic AI use that you can build into a corporate environment. Am I trying to build AGI here in my office? Absolutely not. We're so far from that, and the need for hardware is just crazy. But if I want to be able to help a developer to solve a specific use case with AI, this is what I'm trying to show you guys how to do. So I'm building out a lot of PCs, and make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to give you guys more of that as we continue to build it. So practical AI timeframes are extending out further and further. You even see the releases from OpenAI getting slower and slower. Implementation paths are lengthening. Development cycles are longer than projected. Training requirements exceed expectations. So the path forward needs to be focused applications that show more promise than just general API. We need to get into practical use cases, and those need to be prioritized over the things like Grok 3 being trained by 200,000 H100s. Like, that's a staggering amount of cost. If we'd taken that effort to solve some specific use cases into specific agents with AI, I think we could have gotten really good. So we need to stop boiling the ocean and start really coming down to some specific use cases with AI. Now, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to have you point out where I'm wrong. Here at Startup Hack, we love to train software developers in our licensed coding boot camps, as well as to build custom software solutions for companies. So hit us up, because we'd like to help you out. You can check out startuphack.com/Spencer, and we can help your company get moving like crazy. And here's some great information for you.
Want to become a software developer but don't want to spend 4 years in college and rack up massive student loan debts? Think you need technical expertise to get started? Welcome to Startup Hack, a better way to start your software career without student loans and years without income. One-on-one tutoring is included, so you never get stuck and have guidance through the whole process. No technical experience is necessary. Learn at your own pace and in your own space. Startup Hack has worked with local state agencies in your area to make it so that qualifying students can get the program costs covered entirely, and students can start earning while they learn.
Startup Hack's .NET Coding Bootcamp was a game changer for my career. As someone with no prior programming experience, I was initially intimidated by the idea of learning to code, but the instructors at Startup Hack broke down complex concepts into easy to understand lessons and provided hands-on projects that really cemented my understanding. The curriculum was comprehensive and up to date and got me ready for my first job. What really set Startup Hack apart was the focus on practical, real-world skills. Thanks to Startup Hack, I landed my dream job as a .NET developer within weeks of graduating. I went from knowing nothing about code to building professional-grade web applications in just a few intense months. If you're looking to break into .NET development or level up your coding skills, I cannot recommend Starter Pack enough.
Complete our 3-month coding bootcamp, gain hands-on experience, and land a paid internship. With 2 years of experience, on average, our graduates are making over $80,000 per year. The 3-month program includes technologies from Microsoft, Google, and Facebook. No debt, just a quick path to earning. Check out starterpack.com to code